Good evening to all of you watching Lok Sabha TV. I'm Anurag Punetha with you. US President Donald J. Trump is coming to India finally, and he would be here on 24th to 25th of February. Trump is coming to India at the invitation of Prime Minister Modi. Trump will hold a joint public meeting with Prime Minister Modi at a cricket stadium in Ahmedabad. He has said that he is looking forward to his first visit to India and indicated also that the two countries may sign a trade deal. President Trump told reporters in his Oval Office a day after the White House announced dates of his India trip that Prime Minister Modi is a great gentleman and I'm looking forward to going to India. And joining me for the discussion through Skype, foreign affairs expert, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia. Dr. Chaulia, very warm welcome in the show. First comment about, it is going to finally happen because there was a lot of speculation about his schedule. Now he's coming and he's quite upbeat about the kind of crowd that may be there to greet him, to listen him.
Yeah, Trump is the ultimate showman. And this is the election year for him, Anurag. So naturally, he will be looking for, these giant, public relations exercises which can convey, not just in India, but back home in the US, that he is widely respected and that he's a big global figure. And, the world's largest democracy is hosting him and toasting him. Trump is an egotistic politician and he likes to talk big and he's very bombastic. So, the talk about, 5 to 7 million people receiving him in Ahmedabad in a road show, I think it will be really up there. At the same level as Howdy Modi or even bigger. I'm sure we will pull out all the stops. And in the process, the nitty-gritty issues you mentioned, trade, defense, energy, all those should progress. But I think the optics are important, especially for, social media savvy politicians like Trump and our own prime minister. So I think it's good that we are going to have this, big, stadium event.
But in spite of these optics, things would determine in real term about whether the two countries sign a trade deal or some conciliatory words from US. Do you think, despite this bonhomie between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump that were indicated at the time of Houston, two countries, Trump has remained acerbic and unhappy about India's high duties. In fact, he called India the tariff king, especially regarding the high duties on Harley-Davidson motorbike. So what changed now in these times?
Well, we have been negotiating quietly with them for this bilateral trade agreement for almost 2 years now. And I think there has been a give and take. And, we know that Trump is going to elections in November. So he is now, advertising more and more victories in trade with other countries. Recently, the US Congress ratified the redefined NAFTA agreement with Mexico and Canada. It's now called USMCA. And he was so proudly showcasing it, saying, look, I'm fighting on behalf of American workers and getting more and more concessions from other countries. And he has been trying to do the same with, not just with China and the Mexico and Canada, but also with the Europeans. He will want to show one more deal to say, look, I fulfilled one more promise. So I think trade deal matters a lot to him. And we know that. So to some extent, we should be playing on that in the negotiations. I think they're still giving finishing touches. There are issues, as you mentioned, about manufacturing and agriculture, but also, a lot of things to do with technology policies that our government has recently introduced. The US is objecting to data localization, e-commerce issues. So they've got a lot of interest in this market. They know it, especially the big US tech companies. And they're through the channel of the US Trade Representative and the White House, they have adopted a hawkish stance and they want to, force other countries to give more concessions. But on, our red lines are also drawn. But I think given that it's more like, celebrating a big trade, one more trade victory. The nitty-gritty don't matter, because even if you see the other deals he has signed with China and with the Canada and Mexico, the gains that the US has made are not so huge.
Okay.
And in fact, the US also made concessions. So likewise, I expect that, they will be give and take, because if he passes this opportunity and the trade deal is not signed, then, we are looking at, he will not be able to boast more and more victories on the trade front for his domestic political base. So I think it will happen, and it's good for us that he is desperate for trade deals, and we also need normalization and improvement on this matter, because that's been holding up the strategic partnership.
But how it will change the dynamics of Southeast Asia? Because Trump engaged recently with Iran, and that somehow backfired to US as well. US-Pakistan relation is also not very good. So how it will change the dynamics, or especially the US and India relation vis-a-vis Pakistan and China?
No, you're right, Anurag. I mean, we expect that the US-India partnership should generate some broader strategic, impact. And that's why Prime Minister today was saying that, we welcome President of the US and the First Lady, and this relationship is good not only for two countries, but for the rest of the world. That means that we are trying to make it still a concrete strategic partnership, which has impact on counterbalancing China, impact on restraining terrorism from Pakistan, impact on, stabilizing Indo-Pacific. But unfortunately, as we have discussed, Trump is not that kind of a president who believes in geostrategy and grand strategy and power projection of the US. He is erratic, and he doesn't have a clear plan for boosting India as a counterbalance for China. That has been a disappointment for us. But I think our hope will be that we will work with the rest of the American system. So Trump will get his big show and all the media coverage, and then behind the scenes at the level of the Secretary of State and our foreign external affairs minister, at the level of the bureaucracies, at the level of the corporate houses, at the level of the societies, we've got deeper links with the US that is not just limited to the top. So I think the hope will be we continue this, especially in Asia. Like you rightly said, there is a huge strategic imbalance because the Chinese power is growing. Okay. And Trump has not shown the ability to put together the coalition building and a multilateral grouping of democratic countries that can push back Chinese aggression. So I think there are limits to how far we can go on that. It has become very transactional. That's why all the talk is about, what we can buy from them, what they will sell to us, and vice versa. We are not talking about how we two can together impact the rest of the world, be it the Middle East, as you mentioned, the Iran situation, or the Indo-Pacific. So I think that is missing, and that is to do a lot with Trump's own ideological priorities and his, what we call the far-right populism in the US. He's not really interested in the US playing a big global role. And that is a downside for us, because we would have liked them to be in our region and to push back against Chinese spread, but that's not happening.
But despite, that last time when Prime Minister Modi went to US and this Howdy Modi rally, when there was a lot of bonhomie hype and hoopla, in fact, he made off-the-cuff remark that he is ready to mediate in Kashmir. That made India somehow a little nervous and embarrassed as well. So don't you think that his unpredictability would be quite tricky as far as the Indian diplomacy is concerned?
Yeah, he has left us in the lurch on Afghanistan. I mean, Trump is almost ready. The news is that he has already okayed the, interim peace agreement with the Taliban. Okay. So, and he will start withdrawing US troops. He will go to elections in November saying, I've already pulled out most of the troops. I'm out of the place. So that isolationism of Trump means that, there's a lot of onus on the regional powers, especially India. We have a huge stake in the moderate and, stability of Afghanistan, to have a moderate outcome there, not to allow, return to Taliban rule or ISIS takeover. So I think on that front, Trump does not have any strategies. His strategy is simply to get out, and cut the US losses. So I think, and the same applies with Pakistan. Initially, we were happy because he withdrew, the military aid for Pakistan when he came in, and he was very angry with them. But subsequently, he went back to the same old, game of pacifying and resuming assistance to Pakistan in return for their help with the Taliban peace talks. So I think on that count, he's been disappointing. But that's what I'm saying. We used to depend a little more on the US in the past, believing that they can stabilize Afghanistan, at least militarily, through NATO, or that they will keep the Chinese in check in the Indo-Pacific. But I think that era is over now. Trump is signaling that just tell me what you're going to buy and sell. Will you reduce the trade deficit? It's come down to 16 billion, like you said. Bring it down to 10 billion, and he's happy, I think. And he'll say more U.S. exports. That's it. So he does not have a big geopolitical understanding or a vision. And unfortunately, if he wins again, which is likely in November, then we're going to have a long spell of this kind of isolationism. So we have to prepare to take the initiative ourselves, Anurag. If the US is willing to partner with us on some things, well and good, so be it, and we will take the hand. But on many occasions, I think that Trump is a type of politician we should not, be overly expectant that he will be strategically generous to us.
Okay, but I'm asking again on the trade deal, as India is hoping a lot on that. Both countries are showing in recent time a lot of sign of growing protectionism. Cultivating trust and achieving confidence, don't you think would be a little tricky and difficult task? So when there are reports of bonhomie between two leaders, don't you think this scope of enhancing the bilateral trade would be a little tricky, as Trump is going to face his people this year because of the election, and Mr. Modi is trying hard to bring economy back on the wheels. So no one would be willing to risk its own business interest.
Yeah, and if you take the case of, for example, Amazon and all the e-commerce companies, for example, they have been pressurizing to open up the Indian market and to reduce the limitations and the regulations on them. And the US is trying to use that. But on the other hand, we have our own what we call the mom and pop stores and the small retailers who do not want unscrupulous practices by big American e-commerce giants. So on these matters, there is a conflict of interest when, especially in trade on certain items, there is a conflict of interest. But I think, like Dr. Jaishankar, our foreign minister, was saying, the goal is to try and work with the US system as a whole and to convince them that we have shared interests, and where we have shared interests, to work together and to improve things. So 150 billion, including goods and services together, is a big figure in terms of bilateral trade, and we must preserve that. We should not let it collapse under the pressure of this protectionism. I think end of the day, Indian market is huge. And now that we are projecting a bounce back for our economy in the coming quarters, and then by next year, we'll go back to 6% or more. I think, the American corporations will ultimately find value here because the Chinese market is close to them on many of these matters. They are finding China more frustrating than India. So end of the day, I think they will reconcile. The only thing is Trump needs to be, briefed that, India is a land of opportunity, and that he should not be viewing us with the same kind of, extreme suspicion that he has done with China. So we are not a competitor of the US. We are not a strategic rival of the US, while China is a strategic rival. We should be making the distinction to try and convince the Americans, if not Trump himself, then the broader system of the US government, so that, things go on smoothly, because we do need this relationship. There are limits to the relationship. We have to do some things on our own, as I said, to secure our region and our extended neighborhood. But we also need this relationship, because without this, we will be left rudderless to maintain balance of power in Asia.
Okay, we will be left rudderless in this power game in Asia. Thank you very much, Dr. Chaulia, for joining me. So this visit is very crucial and is happening at a very crucial stage as far as the India-US relations concerned.